Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh-Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News Extra, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya studios. These are our top stories. President Trump says the long and painful nightmare's finally over for Israelis and Palestinians as Hamas hand over all 20 living hostages to Israel and Palestinian prisoners are released as part of the ceasefire deal. Meanwhile, Netanyahu tells Trump he's committed to peace on such a moving day. And world leaders gather at a Gaza peace summit in Egypt to discuss ending the war. President Trump has said the long and painful nightmare is finally over for Israelis and Palestinians during a speech to Israel's parliament. The president was greeted with cheers as he spoke in the Knesset on a historic day that saw Hamas hand over all 20 living hostages to Israel and Palestinian prisoners released as part of the ceasefire deal in Gaza. Here's more of what President Trump had to say.
Generations from now, this will be remembered as the moment that everything began to change, and change very much for the better. Like the USA right now, it will be the golden age of Israel and the golden age of the Middle East. It's going to work together. It is a good feeling. Isn't that nice to say? You know, I just said the hostage. First time I said the hostages are back. It feels so good to say it. No, and my personality actually is all about stopping wars, and it seems to work. It seems to work. But now at last, not only for Israelis, but also for Palestinians and for many others, the long and painful nightmare is finally over. And as the dust settles, the smoke fades, the debris is removed, and the ashes cleaned from the air, the day that breaks on a region transformed and a beautiful and much brighter future appears suddenly within your reach. This is now a very exciting time for Israel and for the entire Middle East, because all across the Middle East, the forces of chaos, terror, and ruin that have plagued the region for decades now stand weakened, isolated, and totally defeated.
To discuss this and all of today's stories, I'm joined by Dubai 92 presenter Jono and Al Arabiya senior presenter Rawia Alami. Rawia and Jono, thank you so much for joining me. So, Rawia, let's just quickly touch on what Donald Trump said in the Knesset. We just heard him there. What did you make of the speech? It was an hour long.
Yes, it was very long, actually, but it was the entire visit, President Trump's visit to Israel and to the Knesset, the address at the Knesset, I think, was a great diplomatic show and spectacle. The welcome that President Trump received in Israel and in the Knesset was a welcome for heroes. He was showered with praise and compliments by all the speakers that spoke before he did at the Knesset. Numerous standing ovations as well. But I think the speech reflects a message of complete support for Israel. Also complete support for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He actually asked him to stand, and there was a standing ovation and a round of applause inside the Knesset for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Even though President Trump, being President Trump, he couldn't help but point out to the Knesset that he's not the easiest person to deal with, but that's what makes him great, as he said. There were many things many standout moments during that speech for me. One of them was President Trump jokingly asking the Israeli president to pardon President Trump, which I think is more than just a joke. I don't know if we will have time to talk about it. But in general, President Trump looked like he was very much at home. He was very natural when he joked about, the leaders, that he is going to miss the summit in Egypt Egypt because of the long speeches. He felt, or he seemed to be very at home, very comfortable, even more than the other speakers in the Knesset, who seemed to be scrambling to compete to shower him with praise and compliments.
Yeah, it was an extremely interesting moment when we watched Donald Trump address the Knesset and, like you said, did ask for that pardon for Benjamin Netanyahu, who was indicted back in 2019 on charges involving corruption and a few other things. And it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out, especially as we head to a next election, Jono, in Israel. But also Donald Trump said something that really stood out. The skies are calm, the guns are silent, and the sirens are still. The only big question that I think everyone is asking now, after we've seen this moment today, which was historic and the hostages came home, are we confident that things can stay this way? Are we confident that the next phases of this 20-point plan, some people are calling it a framework, can be carried out?
So I think that's the million-dollar question that nobody really knows the answer to right now. 737 days ago was when all this began. It's been a long-fought peace agreement. It's been a long-fought war that has taken place, and it's been thousands and thousands of people who've lost their lives in this. The question is, will it last longer than 6 months? That is the last precedence that we have. The Tahiti from 2008 lasted 6 months. So if it can go beyond that, then I think we could be onto something that is significant, that is diplomatically groundbreaking, so to speak. And I think that then Donald Trump can hang his hat on this and say, look, the peace agreement has worked. There is a lot of time between now and then, so the other side of the new year, to see what exactly happens. Phase 1 is where we're at, and I know that Donald Trump had referenced today that phase 2 has already started. Realistically, it's not. And also we have to remember that Hamas have not laid down their arms, and I know when you spoke to Yotam earlier, he said the same thing. They haven't thrown away the guns, so there is still the risk that there could be an insurgence yet again. And of course we have to now look and see, well, what's gone on in Gaza in this time. We know that there's been a movement of people who have joined Hamas or who've been recruited into Hamas. So you now have to wonder, is there other factions who are also at play here who may destabilize the region once again? We can hope, we can pray that this will hold, but I do think it will require 6 months. Hamas has lost legitimacy, but he said in his speech that they've been completely defeated. And I think until they're disarmed, that's not exactly the case. And I think that's where this is going to fall. If it's going to fall down anywhere, that's where it'll fall down.
And also today, when Donald Trump was speaking in Egypt, he said on the Gaza deal, reconstruction requires that it be demilitarized. So once again, we see Israelis and Palestinians rejoice as hostages are released and prisoners are freed. But there's this massive question about Hamas disarming. As you mentioned today, there were clashes within Gaza between Hamas and other factions as a power vacuum opens up.
The recent clashes really were between members of Hamas, apparently, as were reported in Palestinian media and Arab media, and another faction that was apparently, or they are described as being backed by Israel, the Abu Shabab faction, which was created during the war. The Hamas called them collaborators with Israel. They see themselves as a local Gazan force aim at disarming or at least fighting Hamas and their control over the Gaza Strip. But in whichever case, look, the hardest, the most work is yet to come in the next phases. Now, it depends whether, if it holds or not, on many different factors, in my opinion. One of them is whether President Trump is going to keep an eye on this, and I think he will, as he reiterated many times today and in the past few days. It depends on Israel also implementing the rest of the phases, and on the negotiations and how they are going to go within the next phase. And obviously Hamas's, collaboration or cooperation within these next stages. There's no doubt the most difficult task is yet to come.
I think it will be external pressures as well. You'll have to look from Israel, Arab states, international players in this game as well, to say if they're going to play a part in stabilising Gaza at this point. Because as things stand, Hamas remains, at least on theoretically speaking, significantly in control over Gaza. And while that governance continues, there is the risk, as we said, of a civil war, of civil unrest, because there may be many Gazans see no clear alternative to Hamas at the moment. And while they're still armed, they are still dangerous. So yes, I think phase one, we can start putting that behind. But there is still, if you look on the Palestinian side, the number of hostages that have been released, Palestinians who are being held by Israel, there has been 1,700 that have been released today, 250 who are serving life sentences. An estimated 8,000 more Gazans are being held captive in Israel.
It's a huge number.
It's a huge number. There is, obviously, there's a caveat there with regards to what camps they're being held in and what the reasons they're being held for, and some of them will not be getting the pardon or the parole or the freedom at this stage. But until more of them are returned back, I think that that's probably something that will also play a part in this.
So we talk about this 20-point peace proposal as a framework. We've seen phase one be played out today. The hostages returned back to Israel, the living hostages and Palestinian prisoners. But we must remember, and I think what makes this feel different for myself, and I don't know if you two feel the same as me, as journalists we've covered this extensively, but it's also the Arab and Muslim leaders involved in this and the pressure that they can put on Hamas to make sure that this is followed through. Donald Trump has got everybody involved.
Yes.
And it seems a pretty remarkable thing that he's managed to pull off, that in Egypt, we see the Emir of Qatar, we see the President of Turkey, Erdogan, we see
It's
Al
probably
Sisi.
the images that came out of the Egypt summit today probably sums it all. These were the words of President Trump. He said that some of the wealthiest, the richest, most influential leaders are behind me, and he said it's good that they are behind us, which means backing this President Trump's peace plan, which means that there is a universal, or let's say an international support for this plan, which is a really good thing. But then again, talking about the pressure that was applied on all sides to get to this deal. We saw today President Erdogan, how President Trump spoke of him, and in almost all Turkish, Israeli, even Palestinian media, they were all leading up to today. They were talking about the pivotal role that Turkey played in the last probably leg of these negotiations, that President Erdogan was asked personally by President Trump to come in and put pressure on Hamas, and that's what he did, while President Trump pressured Netanyahu.
And it was quite interesting because we saw Benjamin Netanyahu didn't travel to Sharm el-Sheikh, and a lot of the reason is because Erdogan of Turkey didn't want him there, also not to be photographed with Mahmoud Abbas, who's there. But yes, Trump says Turkey has one of the most powerful armies in the world, and that's what he said to Recep Tayyip Erdogan a little bit earlier.
Look, I think he had to lord praise upon the people who were instrumental in this, because this was not just a Trump peace deal, but he was instrumental in this. It's so important for so many reasons. What we've witnessed today is the first time a US president has declared a Middle East war as over, especially from the Israeli parliament, that we've seen something like this happen. The parallels that have been drawn from 1979 from Camp David, and the parallels from the Abrahamic Accords that were signed in 2020 as well are being seen. And if this peace accord holds up, if this peace deal sticks through for 6 months, then yes, it is going to be, this will be the legacy of Donald Trump's presidency of term 2. If not, and we see some premature optimism is what was delivered from the stage today. But regardless, he put on a show, which is what he went there to do. And I think, and we're seeing more of it again emerging from Egypt this evening, we're getting the full-on Trump effect.
And he's collecting also,
awards.
Highest honors, awards from different countries. Not the Peace Nobel Prize yet, but he did get the highest honor in Israel, which is the Heart of David, the highest honor in Egypt, which is the Order of the Nile. Yes, the Order of the Nile as well.
But like you did say, Donald Trump, Trump is the showman of the world, and what I found was remarkable today is he has so much energy. He did this trip to Israel, he addressed the Knesset, he left Israel, he went to Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, he met al-Sisi, he had a photo
Considering
with everyone.
he's in his late 70s.
And he is just putting everything into this. So for some reason, I think we all have a lot of optimism.
He's unfazed by anything.
Yes.
Even when we saw the protesters who made their
Yes.
win from Hadash Tal, they within 10 seconds, that was gone. And Donald Trump just got back to it again and said, right, where are we? Let's talk about Steve. He's great. Just straight back into a chat about Steve Witkoff again, completely unfazed by it. The guy is a showman. And I think that that's what a lot of people are playing up to. And especially when we chat about Egypt, we'll see a bit more about that, because I think that's what world leaders are doing right now. And that's what he's doing.
Absolutely. He's heaping praise on them and they're heaping praise on Donald Trump. It's been one busy news day, I must just say. Donald Trump, we're all watching you. Now, let's move on to the hostages and the prisoners. Now, as Palestinian prisoners were released, the remaining 20 living Israeli hostages were also released by Hamas. Here's the moment some of those hostages were returned.
My heart is peace now that I can see his mother and his father having him. So I'm really happy for them that they can be together, and I can see how pain, 24 months of pain that they didn't know if he will come back.
Jono, I must say one thing, it was so moving, those images today. Those families and those parents have been waiting over 700 days to get their children or family members back. And Hamas has also revealed the 4 bodies who will be released too today. It's been an emotional moment, and it's a moment that many people have been hoping for, and we've had some false starts throughout this programme, but we're here.
I think it's the moment everyone's been waiting for, because it's difficult to watch that and not to feel moved to tears or to emotion, which a lot of people did today, to see the Israeli hostages being returned, and likewise on the opposite side to see Palestinian prisoners being returned back after years, so not just 2 years, but some had been 22, 24 years that they've been away from their families. So there is a deep outpouring of emotion to see this right now. And if we look at it, this was the non-negotiable out of this deal, and to see the payoff on it like that, I think that's exactly, after a period of uncertainty for all these families, for the 20 living hostages to be returned. Now, there's 4 bodies that have been returned back as well, and they're some of the earlier victims, and we know a little bit more about them now. They are Guy Iliuz, Yussi Sharbi, Bipin Joshi, and Daniel Perez. The first one, Joshi, he is a Nepali agricultural student. They weren't entirely sure what had happened to him. They kind of felt he'd met his demise, but they had expressed grave concern. Israel had expressed grave concern about him. Iliuz, who had been at the Nova Festival, he'd been taken from there. He'd succumbed to his wounds in Gaza in a hospital there as well due to lack of medical treatment, but that was in December of 2023. Perez was 22. He was a platoon commander in the 7th Armoured Brigade, and he was the first casualty of this fighting, of this war, and he again passed away battling Hamas on the 7th of October in 2023. And Sharebi, who's the brother of a freed hostage, he was kidnapped from his home on October the 7th and was slain in captivity. So they're the 4 bodies that we know have been returned. Hamas have said that due to collapsed tunnels being the main reason that they're citing, and also the fact that Gaza, from what we're seeing, is rubble. It is a pile of rubble. There is nothing there of any substance whatsoever. It is making it a little bit difficult and tricky to retrieve the bodies of those hostages, which for the families that we're seeing all the joy and the wonderful moments of the return, there are also 24 families who are waiting for bodies to be returned. And as Donald Trump has rightly said in the past, they love them and they express the want to have those bodies returned just as much as if they were living and breathing in front of you.
But Donald Trump also made it clear today that it's going to be a difficult exercise to try to find the bodies, but they are hoping that they can manage to do that. And I think that will be an important part of carrying this phase onto phase 2, like we have been talking about. But Rawia, who has been released from the Palestinian prisoner side? We saw emotional pictures to your families meeting them in Ramallah. And where were they headed?
Emotional pictures on both sides, to be honest with you, Leigh-Ann, today. On the Palestinian side, apparently 1,966 prisoners are to be released. A lot of them have been today, as the confirmations are coming. 1,700 of them are from Gaza, and they were arrested and detained during the war. They were returned to Gaza today, to Khan Yunis, to Al-Nasser Hospital, where they were examined by medical teams, and then they were reunited with their families. 250 Palestinians who are serving long sentences also are to be released. 150 of them have been released, and they were sent to Egypt, and they actually arrived this afternoon at the Rafah crossing. Now, these are serving, as I said, long sentences, 4 and 5 life sentences, and apparently in this case, the life sentence is 99 years. So we're talking about people who are serving sentences for 500 and 600 years, and some of them, as Jono previously mentioned, have already been in Israeli prisons for decades. We have also 22 Palestinian minors and 360 bodies of militants also are to be released.
I found it interesting when we had a look at the list of the Palestinian prisoners which were to be released last week, that Marwan Barghouti wasn't on it. And we know he's part of the Hamas faction political wing. But Fatah. Sorry, the Fatah political wing. But Hamas have asked for his release. And we've spoken about this a lot because it's predicted that Marwan Barghouti is the most popular Palestinian politician and could possibly be the person to lead in the future, but Israel just don't see it that way.
There were hopes that he would be on the list, and actually there were reports saying that his wife traveled, that was in the last days of the negotiations before they announced the deal, that she traveled, she was told to travel to Egypt quickly, and they were interpreting this as to his name will be on the list. Apparently it's not, nor is Ahmed Saadat's, another 3 names, prominent names that Hamas has asked to be added to the list to be released, but they weren't. Israel has not even released Dr. Hussam Abu Safiyyeh, who is a Palestinian pediatrician who used to be the general manager of Kamal Adwan Hospital. This hospital was evacuated completely by the Israelis in December. He was arrested exactly a year ago, and they are with no charges, and they are refusing to release him as well.
Which makes no sense. But then there are ones who you think there's a lot who've, like there's Abdullah Barghouti, who's in as been pivotal in organising suicide bombings. He was known as a bomb maker as well. He's on 67 life sentences. But he's in prison for something that he has done, which is intrinsically wrong. So you can understand why Israel will say no to that one. Ibrahim Hamid, who also likewise had organised suicide bombings as well. And though in 2025 there had been a deal that had been struck, which would have seen him been released, he's not been released yet as well. But then there's some nonsensical ones, which you think a paediatrician who's got no affiliation, has not been charged with anything. Why is he not been released?
No proof that he was affiliated with Hamas or anything.
But the problem is Israel said, and Hamas functioned within the hospitals, and it was a cover. It was somewhere that they restocked, they rearmed, and where a lot of their tunnels were.
That makes the entire medical staff or team that operates within Gaza, the entire of Gaza, a target. I mean, and what is the proof? But anyways, I mean, these are the Israeli claims, these are the Palestinian claims, and these are the facts of the day.
Jono, a quick thought is we saw the 20 hostages confirmed to be alive, Israeli hostages returned today. And we've seen the families in Hostage Square in Tel Aviv for 2 years now celebrating this. It must be so difficult to come back to normality, and just what medical treatment will they need, psychological treatment? It must be an extremely difficult experience for these.
What I will say, and what was I, at least from my point of view, and I felt that a lot of them at least came back looking not as gaunt as I'd expected them to look on the return. So at least they've been somewhat nourished. That's not to take away from the fact that 24 of them are dead. But the 20 who've been returned home, I think there's deep ramifications on their side, but not just for them, for their families at large as well. Like you mentioned, the psychological ramifications of this will be immense and will be years long, which is, we very often see the physical casualties on the surface element of it. But we know, and we've already heard about the claims of PTSD from hostages who've already been released and who've been back at home who just can't get a night's sleep because every time they close their eyes, they see the same thing. And I'm sure the exact same works the opposite way around for Palestinians who are returning back home after being kept in captivity. There will be a mental health crisis which will follow on from this as well. There will also be, of course, these people have returned to Palestine where there are no healthcare services at the moment. Aid is getting into the country. That's not going to rebuild hospitals overnight. Who is going to look after these people who definitely need some care and assistance? Whereas the Israelis who've gone back home as well, likewise, they're going to need assistance and care. And it's the real fallout is from now, in the next 6 months, in the next year, and even in the next 4 years, that we'll look and see the true ramifications from this war. Not from the people who've been slain and who've fallen, but from the people who've been left behind to pick up the pieces.
Absolutely. And not just that, I mean, apart from the Palestinian prisoners, the Israeli hostages, there is a sense of collective trauma, whether it be in Israel or in Gaza. If you take Gaza, you're talking about an entire generation of children who are traumatized, malnutritioned, orphaned, maimed. You have, I mean, the problems to deal with are endless. And then you have on the Israeli side also, you know, what happened on the October 7th, the trauma that they have been dealing with for 2 years because of the hostages not being returned. In whichever case, this is a time, if truly this ceasefire holds, it turns into a conclusive and comprehensive peace deal, there is a lot of groundwork to be done in the future.
And it is, it may seem like it's a long way away, but the bodies of the deceased, unless they are returned and until they are returned, phase 2 is not going to happen. We ideally would like to see a move to phase 2 in the next 10 days. Netanyahu has said himself, until everybody is returned, there will be no normalization. And I think that's something that is not going to be achievable in 10 days. I realistically don't think it is. There has to be some movement on that. And I know Donald Trump did reference it, but I think they need to be realistic. And I think now the jubilation, the joy, the celebration, that is one thing that is for today and tomorrow. But then after that, there is the real nitty-gritty stuff of getting down to phase 2 and to keep the traction going on this and to not leave up the momentum.
And I think that is a really important thing to highlight, because I wonder, we need to see the sides pressuring Hamas, and we need to see Donald Trump keeping the pressure on Israel in order to make sure that we get onto the other phases. But thanks for your thoughts on that there. Let's move on to the peace summit now, which is happening in Egypt. And President Trump has praised Egypt's President Sisi for playing an important role in the Gaza deal. The two leaders appeared together at a press conference ahead of an international summit on the agreement. So, Rawia, another thing that happened today is, as we said, Donald Trump got on a plane. He went to Sharm el-Sheikh. All the world leaders have now gathered in Egypt. Amazing scenes. And Egypt put this together so quickly, and for so many world leaders to get there at such a short space of time just shows the respect they have for Donald Trump. But how politically important is this?
Well, it is very politically important. It was also a diplomatic spectacle. It was put together very quickly, as you mentioned, yet it made sense to be hosted in Egypt. The summit is co-hosted by both President Trump and President Sisi of Egypt. But President Trump, it was obvious that he was taking the lead on the speeches. He started talking first, and he was directing the steps of the summit. Now, for Egypt, it restores holding such a summit in Egypt. It restores its pivotal role in the region. It capitalizes also on the fact that Egypt is on President Trump's good side after their role in the mediation during the Gaza war. From the American perspective, it is a big spectacle, and we know that President Trump loves spectacles. He gathered world leaders in Egypt. He even gathered world leaders of countries that have nothing to do with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I think it was a message to say that we today celebrate maybe President Trump's biggest diplomatic achievement yet, which is this peace deal in Gaza. Yet we are also celebrating his previous achievements. It was a reminder of those achievements. After all, he's been claiming during today and in the last few days that by today he has ended 8 wars, and that was the spectacle. That was the summary of the spectacle we saw standing behind him today.
I also thought we see all these world leaders together, and maybe that's another way that Donald Trump wants to delegate how things are figured out in Gaza in the future, the reconstruction of Gaza, the aid delivery, which countries can help in certain aspects. Jono, I'm not sure of what you thought of that, but the UK has actually quietly been hosting talks on a Gaza reconstruction, and those have been happening in the next 3 days behind the scenes. And we see these big, powerful people meeting, but is that for a reason? Is that to shore up those missing details?
So, and we've already seen as well, Trump urging Israeli lawmakers to move from this wartime posture to more of a rebuilding and diplomacy as well, which I think is probably indicative of what we're going to see in the next weeks to months. Trump himself, he's poised himself as this central broker in the whole deal in the first place, in the peace plan that's taking place. He will want to keep an eye on this. But we've heard him say it many, many times before, he's a very busy man. And I feel that delegation is probably one of his very strong suits. And I feel because Marco Rubio and also Steve Witkoff have played such pivotal roles, I will see them maybe taking something of a senior role here in this. And then they will delegate it down the ranks as well. We will see some level of this group, a collective who will get together, I think, and they'll be the ones who will make all the day-to-day decisions and then keep President Trump informed about it while he can turn his attention to other things that have been, let's face it, on the back burner, including domestic issues.
I find it very fascinating. Jared Kushner was there, Tony Blair. We've all been speaking about the former UK Prime Minister, and Tony Blair was in Egypt, and it's so fascinating who could possibly join this board of peace that go into Gaza.
He is one of the main candidates. Of course, he was endorsed by President Trump to be on the board of peace, as President Trump called it, even though, as you said, he kept complaining that he's a very busy man, but because he will think about it and they'll probably have it done. It was reported in the last few days that the Palestinians had a problem with Tony Blair being a part of this process. Today, I've seen more reports talking about, no, the Palestinians are more open to cooperating with Tony Blair as well over this. But definitely, I mean, President Trump today referred many times to the reconstruction of Gaza during this summit, and he did say that some of the people that have generously donated or pledged to help in this reconstruction are here today. And he said that he himself and the United States are going to be a partner in this reconstruction process.
And there will be peacekeeping troops that will be required to be on the ground. The US will not be the ones who will be sending peacekeeping troops. I would think that will likely fall to other Arab nations. And it will also probably likely fall somewhat to Europe if they want to throw their hat into the ring on this as well. And so I think that, yes, the Board of Peace will be established, but much like any good company, Donald Trump will sit at the top as the director/CEO of this company, and the minions will feed into him once a week and tell him exactly what's going on the ground. And then attention may be focused back towards Russia, Ukraine, the domestic issues that he's dealing at home, which continue. You know, they're just
The
falling
US
to
shutdown continues?
Yes, definitely. I mean, there are a lot of local issues looming in the U.S., but he actually mentioned in his speech at the Knesset, he actually mentions Iran. He said that Iran are ready to make peace,
And they want help.
And they want help. And he even asked, Netanyahu and the Knesset, would it be something that you consider? But then he said that before we work on this, he asked Steve Witkoff to focus more on Ukraine and Russia. I think this is the upcoming project for President Trump, definitely.
And I'd like to see that as well. I think we've forgotten that continues to rage on as well, and it's taken page 3 and 4 of the newspapers while Israel and the peace deal here in Gaza was so important to get that done and passed and crossed the line, because many thousands of people were losing their lives every single month. We were just continuously talking about it, and I feel like that was the priority. I did think Russia-Ukraine would have been an easier one to solve, and I did think when he said 24 hours that would have been realistic, but I think now that's probably the nitty-gritty of that needs to be dug into. If he can do it in Israel, I really think Donald Trump has got a fighting chance at managing to do it for Ukraine and Russia.
Well, we'll have to see what happens, but we know that President Zelensky of Ukraine will be heading to Washington on Friday to meet Donald Trump, and the discussions will all be placed around these Tomahawk long-range missiles that Ukraine has been asking the US for. However, there has been difficulty in the US giving them to Ukraine because Russia will say that this is a clear escalation. But it looks more and more like Donald Trump is moving that way in Ukraine's favor, because Russia has just been launching unprecedented drone attacks on Ukraine and attacking all the energy infrastructure as the cold winter comes into play. So Donald Trump, maybe now we'll see a change of stance and possibly something happening on the Russia-Ukraine front. But thank you so much for all of your thoughts on that. I feel like we could have done more than we did on that, 2 hours possibly. But let's turn to something lighter now. And it's time of the show where Rawia and Jono have chosen their quirkiest stories of the day. And Jono, I feel like this story really shows all of our age, dare I say it. Why are the younger generations shouting on their speakerphones? So Gen Z.
Yeah, you might be Gen Z if you are a proud hailer, that is somebody who uses the speakerphone when they call, or a walkie-squawky, somebody who uses earpods and walks around continuously shouting into their phone. Half of Gen Z have never held a phone to their ear, and that to me is shocking as a statistic.
It's sad, isn't it?
Yeah, 36%.
They usually use the
earpods,
yeah,
correct. 29% are using earbuds for every call, 36% are using a loudspeaker. So this is the whole idea that you take your phone out. For some bizarre reason, you've decided that instead of putting it up to your ear like a normal, sane person, that you will instead take your phone out, actively go and press the loudspeaker so that everyone in your surrounding, be it on public transport or wherever you are, has now got to endure listening to your mundane phone call for some bizarre reason. And the reason is that they've simply built up a habit. Younger people are used to FaceTime. They're used to WhatsApp calling. Yeah. So therefore, when they normally answer the phone, they're not putting it up to their ear. They're actually face-to-face speaking with somebody on the screen. Yeah. So that's how they're used to dealing with it. So when a call comes through, and in the unlikely event that you call a Gen Z and they actually answer the phone to you, if I've learned anything from my godson, who never does at 13 years old.
My nephew, never.
Never. But if they have, for some bizarre reason, answered the phone, they'll do it on loudspeaker, which I just find a whole generation of people who never get to experience the feeling of a warm ear from having the phone up to your ear for too long, for hours on end.
But do you not think that there's something else that I always think about, is reality TV did this. Soon if you watch the Kardashians or you watch the Housewives of Beverly Hills.
On...
So if we were on it, you and me, the Housewives of Dubai, it would call and Rawia would come up and be like, oh, Rawia, it's Rawia. You know, what are you doing with your day?
It's like they're always pretend cameras around.
Yeah, maybe.
Them.
Yes.
Oh,
maybe you're always on show.
Yeah.
Older people, and we're not of that generation, obviously, but the elderly generation say that it is actually quite rude to take a call on loudspeaker in public. Not only that, but also the person on the other end of the phone has to hear a muffled version of your voice because you're on loudspeaker as well. So Alexander Graham Bell is...
if the other person doesn't know that they're on loudspeaker.
The last thing I want is a conversation.
Look at his reaction. I mean, It is very
Jono,
annoying
what do you
for
say on the phone?
It is,
Well,
it is
it's not-
extremely annoying for
What if you're having a conversation about
Yeah.
something personal, financial, or
It is.
otherwise?
No, I agree.
And my mum, who is not a Gen Z, surprisingly, does this all the time, and I have to continuously remind her, please take me off loudspeaker. You don't know what I'm about to say. You really have no idea what I'm about to say. It could be anything. Take me off loudspeaker.
Have a
But
bit of
Gen Z
respect.
have so many different annoying things. I mean, I'm talking about from my children. Yes, they would never pick up a call. I have to scream at them in order for them to pick up a call. The phone is always on Do Not Disturb. They would always text me in abbreviations, and I have to decipher what they've written. They would always make fun of me if I use emojis, but they use stickers. That's okay.
Oh, that's okay. My mum, I know she's going to be watching this and she'll say, Leigh-Ann never answers the phone. But I'm sorry, Mum. Sometimes it's at the wrong time of the day. Not because I don't want to speak
Not
to you.
because you're Gen Z.
Not, well, kind of, wish, you know. You know, if Botox could make me Gen Z, I would be. Rawia, let's go on to yours now. And tell us about the golden retriever. I love this story.
There's nothing annoying about my story.
Oh,
Let's put it
no.
this way.
Your
It's about
story.
this, yes, Duke, the golden
Oh,
retriever. He's
look at
very
him.
cute. He has the habit, apparently he has kleptomania. He has the habit of stealing things from around the house and just bringing them to his owner's bed in the morning. Apparently he's developed the habit of going through the purse as well. The handbag of his owner, but not bringing the entire thing, sometimes just taking the car keys. His favorite things, it could be a toy, it could be a piece of china, a teapot. Apparently it started with him with his owner's glasses, but then it developed into much bigger items and breakable items. And I'm quite surprised that he doesn't break anything. Look at him.
Is that the bin?
It's
Looks like he's
absolutely
taking the bin into the bed. I wouldn't be too happy with that.
right?
He's taking like the cleaning bucket into the bed.
It's just, it's a present.
Yeah,
It's
it's
a
quite
present.
sweet.
Great if you
But
got
he's been
people
doing
over.
it for 18 months, apparently, ever since he was adopted. Apparently, the owners were warned that he has kleptomania and he has this habit, but they decided to take a chance on him. And now
Great
they'll
excuse
find
if
it.
something goes missing in the house
Right.
and you've got visitors and cash has gone missing. The dog stole it. What a surprise.
And I must say, they adopted this dog, and this dog's got so many followers now on Instagram.
Oh,
So
yes,
they
I forgot
probably-
to say that he has
Yes.
160,000 followers on Instagram. And actually, his owners post, you know, the different items that he tends to steal and bring them, and they all comment on it, like with the car keys. Everybody had a theory about why he took the car keys as well. It's really cute, very cute, very, very popular as well.
That is so sweet. A little star in the making. Well, thanks to our guests today, Dubai 92 presenter Jono Hayes and Al Arabiya senior presenter Rawia Alami. And that's all from us on W News Extra. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Of course, follow us on X, GNT, with Tom Burgess-Watson will be coming up next. Goodbye and thank you.